The first day of summer 2011 will forever remain in the Waller family's memory as the day that drastically changed their lives. Jackie called her sister, Sherel, saying she was going to pick up the kids from her ex-husband Clay, and would return home right after. But Jackie never came back, and she didn't even call her sister back. Sherel, overcome with anxiety, tried unsuccessfully to reach her. The worst thoughts were creeping into her mind. So around 7 in the evening, she got behind the wheel and headed to the police station. There she made a shocking statement. Sherel insisted that Clay Waller was her sister's killer. Such a statement stunned all the police officers. After all, Jackie had spoken to her sister just a few hours ago, and there was no reason to raise an alarm or think she was in danger. However, Sherel's intuition didn't fail her. Her sister was indeed in a terrible situation. What happened to Jackie, and why was Sherel convinced that her husband had killed her sister even before Jackie was officially declared missing? Jackie was an incredibly kind, sweet, and caring girl. When she met Clay, sparks flew between them immediately. He had speech problems, which often made him the target of mockery. In such situations, Clay felt awkward. But Jackie was different from others. Not only did she not laugh at him, but she always defended her beloved and wouldn't let anyone insult him. That's who Jackie was. She always stood up for the weak, fought against injustice, and helped everyone who needed it. The couple started dating. Their romance developed rapidly, and soon Jackie and Clay got married. At that time, both were around 30, and they dreamed of having a big family. The couple bought a small house in St. Genevieve, Missouri. Jackie lovingly set up their family nest. The woman's career was on the rise, which couldn't be said about her husband. His life was filled with constant failures. Clay couldn't hold down any job for long. So the entire financial burden fell on Jackie's shoulders. The woman dreamed of having children, but there were problems with that. Then she decided to try in vitro fertilization. When she found out about her pregnancy, Jackie was on cloud 9. And when it turned out she was carrying triplets, her joy knew no bounds. The couple had 2 girls, Avery and Addison, and a boy, Maddox. It wasn't easy for the woman to care for 3 babies at once. But she didn't complain and continued to handle everything on her own. Jackie didn't count on help from her husband, who seemed completely uninterested in the children. At that time, Clay got a job at the sheriff's office to provide for the family while his wife was busy with the babies. But he didn't last long there. The man was fired after a year. Only Jackie's parents and sister helped with the children so the woman could occasionally rest. And after Clay's dismissal, she devoted more time to work to support the entire family. Even after the babies were born, Clay didn't change his old habits and showed no interest in either family or work. He only occasionally did odd jobs, but it wasn't the money his family was counting on. It seemed the man was quite content living off his wife, who worked 40 hours a week and took care of the children. Jackie's career was developing rapidly, and soon she took a management position at an insurance company branch. But this only made her husband more relaxed, as he decided not to worry about earning money at all. Instead of appreciating such a wife, Clay began to abuse her in various ways, insult her, call her worthless, and assure her that nobody needed her. Moreover, he had other women. The man behaved like a true abuser. Jackie's parents and sister were outraged by his attitude and urged her to divorce him. But the woman wasn't ready for such a radical step yet and tried to save the family. However, with each passing day, her hopes of saving the marriage were visibly fading. Several years passed, and the Waller family began experiencing difficulties. The couple found themselves in a tough financial situation since the husband wasn't working, and Jackie's salary barely covered all the expenses of their large family. Mortgage debts grew, and soon the bank took their house. The woman decided to use this situation and moved in with her sister, while her husband went to stay with a friend. By that time, the children had grown a little older. Jackie made a difficult but necessary decision to divorce, as she was convinced that she and the children deserved a better life. She discussed this with her husband. At first, Clay took the news quite calmly, but later changed his mind and refused to divorce. The man began threatening Jackie. At first, these were veiled and indirect threats, just hints at possible trouble. Then he moved on to explicit death threats, saying that if she divorced him, she would be signing a death warrant for herself and the children. All this frightened the woman, but she didn't back down from her decision. She simply couldn't live like this anymore and wanted to get rid of her husband. Jackie told her relatives about her husband's behavior. She even kept a diary where she recorded all his antics. Besides that, Jackie noticed that her husband had started stalking her. For safety, the woman stayed with her sister and the children. The kids were 5 years old at the time. They didn't understand what was happening, but Jackie explained to them that it was necessary. Over time, the situation seemed to normalize. The divorce was nearing completion. It seemed that the husband had calmed down, accepted their separation as a fact, and stopped bothering Jackie. The couple was moving on and even started building relationships with other people. The woman allowed her husband to see the children, and there were no more quarrels between them. On June 1, 2011, Clay and Jackie agreed to meet at the lawyer's office to discuss the final important details of the divorce. That day their son Maddox was visiting his father, while the other children were with Jackie's sister, Sherel. After the meeting, Jackie was supposed to pick up the boy. She left the office and called her sister Sherel. She said that everything went well, and she was already heading to Clay's house to pick up their son, after which she would immediately return to her sister's place. That was their last conversation. The 39-year-old Jackie never made contact again. Time passed. Her sister felt anxious and started calling Jackie, but she didn't answer. Then the woman tried to call Clay, but he wasn't picking up either. Sherel suspected that Clay might have done something to Jackie. She wrote him a message: "If I don't hear from Jackie within 5 minutes, I'm going to the police." The man called back immediately and asked what had happened. Sherel replied that she was sure he knew exactly what this was about. But Clay insisted he didn't know where Jackie was and promised to tell her to call Sherel when he saw her. Sherel didn't believe the man. She took her sister's children to their parents and went to the police herself. The detectives treated her statement about Clay's involvement in her sister's disappearance with caution but didn't send the woman home to wait for 24 hours to pass. They immediately took on the case and decided to contact the ex-husband in search of clues about Jackie's whereabouts. When they called him, the police were surprised to learn that Clay was hundreds of miles away from the city where Jackie disappeared. The man had gone to the lake with his new girlfriend and son Maddox. Clay reported that he and Jackie had lunch together, after which they met at the lawyer's office to discuss some aspects of the divorce. Then, according to him, they went to his house together to continue their conversation on this topic. During their chat, he briefly went to the store, and when he returned, he saw that Jackie's car was gone. The man assumed she had left. Clay also noted that their son Maddox was with his new girlfriend at that time, about which his ex-wife was well informed and wasn't worried about the child. So, according to Clay's version, Jackie came to his place not for their son, but purely for conversation. However, his words sounded extremely implausible. After all, Jackie had clearly told her sister Sherel that she was going to Clay specifically to pick up their son, not to discuss anything. Besides, she would hardly have calmly accepted that her son was so far away with some other woman. In such a situation, Jackie would definitely have been angry with her ex-husband. So Sherel didn't believe this story at all. The woman convinced the investigators that Clay was hiding something and the situation was indeed serious. Jackie's missing car was reported, and an extensive search began. Within a few hours, Jackie's Honda Pilot was found on the interstate highway with a flat tire. But this wasn't a coincidence. It turned out that someone had deliberately punctured the tire, and it all looked staged. The car was unlocked and empty, with several blood spots found on the back seat, but there were no clues about the missing woman's whereabouts. The situation seemed even more alarming. It appeared that the woman had been attacked and kidnapped. The search for Jackie focused on this area. Besides police officers, rescuers, K-9 units with dogs, and the missing woman's relatives, many volunteers responded to the family's call and came from all around the county. The heat outside was unbearable, but this didn't stop people willing to help. The family announced a reward of $3,500 for information about Jackie's whereabouts. However, despite all efforts, the search yielded no results. Police increasingly focused on Jackie's ex-husband, Clay. They arrived at his house to talk to him again. The man repeated the same story. When investigators asked for permission to inspect his house and car, he firmly refused and immediately hired a lawyer to protect his rights. For days after Jackie's disappearance, Clay left not just a voice message but addressed her in a crying voice, "Hello, darling. It's Sunday, you disappeared on Wednesday. Please, if you got this message, call me back. I don't know where you are, and I miss you very much. I beg you, call." Later, detectives managed to obtain a search warrant and returned to Clay's house for a thorough inspection. When checking the car, they found spots that looked like blood. Forensics took blood samples and sent them for testing, but the analysis showed it was fish blood. It turned out that shortly before this, Clay had deliberately smeared the car with fish blood and recorded it on video, thus staging a sort of test for the forensics team. During the house inspection, it was noticeable that a carpet was missing from one spot on the floor. A piece of floor covering had simply been cut out, leaving obvious traces. Additionally, small drops of blood were found on the corridor walls. In the basement, there were signs of furniture being moved. It was obvious that something had happened in the house. Forensics looked under the floor and found a bloodied carpet there. Blood samples from the house along with the carpet were sent to the laboratory for testing. Detectives established the missing woman's last movements. At 11 a.m., Jackie was seen with her ex-husband at the pharmacy. The couple behaved normally. 2 hours later, the woman was spotted at an ATM withdrawing money. After this, Jackie no longer appeared on any surveillance cameras. But Clay was recorded later. A few hours after his wife's disappearance, he went to a toy store with his son and new girlfriend. Then the man drove to a car wash in his pickup truck with a boat, which had a suspicious garbage container. Clay was wearing different clothes and thoroughly washed both the vehicle and the boat. Clouds were gathering over Clay, and he became the prime suspect. Investigators released photos of Jackie's ex-husband's pickup truck and boat, asking possible witnesses to come forward. A young couple responded to this appeal, saying they had seen Clay near Devil's Island on the Mississippi River. Detectives managed to confirm this information by checking the suspect's phone billing data. So the police focused their search efforts on that area. They conducted another extensive search but found nothing there. The territory was huge. Still, law enforcement felt that the solution to the mystery of the woman's disappearance was somewhere nearby. Meanwhile, test results came back showing that the blood drops in Clay's house belonged to the missing Jackie. The police were convinced the woman was already dead. Detectives called the man in for questioning, trying to convince him to confess to the murder. But he categorically denied any involvement. Clay insisted these were old blood stains from a kitchen accident. Eventually, investigators didn't have enough evidence to arrest the suspect and charge him. So they released the man but continued to monitor him and conduct the investigation. Clay, who had once worked as a deputy sheriff, perfectly understood that the police were keeping an eye on him. So he played cat and mouse with them, deliberately driving to deserted places and wastelands to confuse the investigation. While the entire county was up in arms, participating in the search for the missing mother of three, Clay continued to mock and laugh at people. He could drive past a search group or Jackie's family, openly show them his middle finger, and shout after them that they were wasting their time and wouldn't find anything anyway. Clay's brazen behavior only increased suspicions about him and raised more questions. Meanwhile, Sherel, Jackie's sister, began a legal battle for custody of the triplets. She feared the children would end up in the custody of their father, who was dangerous for them. Clay's inappropriate actions worked against him, and the court granted custody to Sherel. This threw the man off balance, and he started threatening to harm his ex-wife's sister, including making threats on social media. The woman documented these threats and went to the police. Detectives took advantage of the opportunity and arrested Clay, almost 5 months after Jackie's disappearance. He was charged with making death threats, which he admitted to. However, the man was no longer as brazen as before. He claimed he wrote these messages in a fit of anger and despair over losing custody of his beloved children and had no intention of harming Sherel. Clay considered himself a victim in this situation. Besides investigating the incident with the threats to the sister, police discovered that Clay had other charges against him. These included stealing $50,000 from his previous employer and stalking someone. Detectives started pressuring their former colleague, hoping he would finally confess to killing his ex-wife and reveal the location of the body. But all efforts were in vain. Clay continued to deny any involvement in Jackie's disappearance. Instead of confessing to the crime, he suddenly began claiming he knew who was really behind his ex-wife's death. According to Clay, it was Jackie's new lover named Harry. But detectives explained to him that they had already checked this version, and Harry had an ironclad alibi that allowed them to exclude him from the list of suspects. All evidence pointed exclusively to Clay, but he still continued to deny everything. Eventually, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for threatening Sherel. While Clay was behind bars, police continued investigating Jackie's disappearance. Searches for the missing woman continued on Devil's Island but yielded no results. About 2 years after Jackie's disappearance, having gathered numerous circumstantial evidence, surveillance camera footage, blood traces in the suspect's house, and other facts, police decided to charge Clay with murdering his ex-wife, even in the absence of a body. This was a risky and desperate move, as in case of losing the case, the prosecution wouldn't be able to present the same charges against him again. However, the prosecutor was determined. After consulting with his lawyer, Clay concluded that it would be better for him to make a deal with the investigation and plead guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence. As a condition of the deal, the defendant agreed to confess to the murder and show the location of the body. Jackie's family agreed to this deal, as it was important for them to give her a proper burial. Clay led the police to his ex-wife's body, which he had hidden in a remote location on the sandbars on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River. At first, he couldn't remember under which exact tree he had buried Jackie. But then he confessed that he had placed a bag of fertilizer on her body. One of the police officers, who was actively involved in gardening, noted that large amounts of fertilizer kill trees. They surveyed the area and noticed 3 dead trees that caught their attention. Under one of them, after digging, they indeed found Jackie's body, dressed in the same clothes she was last seen in. The woman's identity was confirmed through dental records. It was indeed Jackie Waller. Finally, Jackie's relatives learned that she was definitely dead and were able to find her body. Now they had the opportunity to pay their last respects and bury her properly. The woman's funeral was held on her parents' golden wedding anniversary. Sherel told the children that their mother was gone and that their father had killed her. This news was a strong shock for the children, as they lost both their mother and father in one moment. Since then, the children have hated Clay and refused to communicate with him. According to the terms of the deal, Clay had to officially confess to murdering his ex-wife and tell all the details of the crime. The man explained that his first thoughts about killing Jackie appeared a year before the tragic event when she announced her decision to divorce. But at that time, he pushed away these evil thoughts, as Jackie was the mother of his children. However, Clay couldn't let the woman take his children away from him. He warned Jackie that this could end badly for her, but she didn't listen. And in his opinion, was her fault. Clay confessed that the day before the murder, he drove to that same secluded spot on Devil's Island to dig a grave for Jackie. That's when he seriously contemplated taking her life. According to Clay, the divorce was generally proceeding peacefully. On the day of the murder, after visiting the lawyer, they were talking, and she suggested they had one last time. So they went to his house. At home, in the kitchen, a conversation developed between them. At some point, Clay decided to look in the refrigerator for a snack. When he suddenly raised his head, he accidentally hit Jackie's head, causing her nose to bleed. This greatly angered the woman. She went into the hallway, where her blood stained the walls, and started yelling at Clay that he would never see his children again. That's when the man snapped and attacked her. He struck Jackie once with his hand to the face, and then strangled her. After this, Clay transported the body in a garbage container and buried it in the pre-dug grave. Later, he thoroughly washed the car and cleaned the house. He took a shower, changed clothes, and, as if nothing had happened, went to meet his new girlfriend and son at the toy store. Clay claimed that everything happened impulsively, in the heat of emotion, and that he hadn't planned to kill Jackie. However, this contradicted his previous statement about digging the grave the day before. Why would he do that if he wasn't planning to kill her? Everything indicated that the murder was premeditated. Moreover, the medical examiner found that the deceased had multiple skull fractures. Therefore, Clay hadn't just punched her in the face but had also struck her with a blunt object. Nobody believed his version of events. Clay, who still showed no remorse for killing his ex-wife, was already celebrating victory and was pleased that he only received 20 years in prison for second-degree murder. Moreover, he could get out early. But it turned out that the prosecutor had kept an ace up his sleeve for Clay. Through his testimony about the grave, the man had dug his own hole. The grave was dug in Illinois territory, and that's where the body was hidden. But the actual murder took place in Missouri. These circumstances fell under the federal law against domestic violence acts committed across state lines. Clay had violated this law, which allowed them to add another 35 years to his sentence. Thus, Clay Waller would only be eligible for parole after serving 85% of the 55-year term. As it turned out, Clay didn't even know about the existence of such a law and couldn't imagine the consequences his confession would bring. But the defendant's suffering didn't end there. Clay's action added cynicism to this story. He wrote a book with a detailed description of Jackie's murder to profit from this tragedy. All these years after Jackie's death, her sister Sherel and her husband continue to raise the children as their own. Jackie's elderly parents helped them with this. The children have grown up and maintain a bright memory of their mom as the best person in the world, who will forever remain in their hearts. They are still angry at their father and miss their mother. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.